In addition to working on Scout, which you can see over on my right, your left, it's been painted. We're getting near the end on that project. Customer brought in a, I'm assuming, I believe it's a Pygmy kayak. Pygmy kayak, of course, is no longer in business, but there's certainly a lot of kayaks out there. He's an elderly gentleman who loves to kayak, but when it gets a little rough, he finds that he's a little bit nervous out there, especially with some of his friends. They don't want to be upside down, they don't want to be over, so he's asking if I can make some sort of an outrigger with some sponsons on the sides here so that it'll add a little bit more stability to his kayak in rough water. So that's what this video is going to be about. It's just a short-term little project, probably take me maybe 4 or 5 days, maybe, I'm thinking. Anyways, let's get to it. To make the outrigger, we're going to add sort of a brace across here, which will fit under the bungees, which I have removed. There's a good heavy 5/8 bungee that kind of goes across here. It'll be something we can just slip under and then attach some floats to act as the outrigger. To make a pattern, I've got this rubber pattern. I don't actually know what they call it, what the proper name for it is, but I think I purchased it at Lee Valley. You can lay it down here. It's rubber, it's got wire in it, and it holds the shape pretty good. So if I form that down there and then kind of make an arc out here, I need to have this sort of level to the water. And on this boat, the customer tells me that the black graphite painted bottom is pretty well waterline when he's in it. So we want to have it above waterline, because there'll be sort of a cross brace here with a big block of foam on it on each side. So I'm allowing for, you know, 1 inch or 2 for the float itself. We don't really know how big it is and how far it needs to be extended from the sort of the side of the kayak itself. But we're going to make it long, and then we can always shorten it. So this holds its shape pretty well. That sort of out to here is the half pattern of the bracing or outrigger that's going to go on. With the pattern made from the flexible rubber, I screwed a couple of pieces of scrap plywood together, and then I traced this out and cut it out on the bandsaw. I then used the female piece off of the cutoff here to see how it matched to the actual boat, and it was pretty close. Then I cut up some ash. We're talking, I don't know, what, 1/8 of an inch thick? Yeah, 1/8 of an inch thick, some a little bit thinner, long enough to bend completely over the whole thing. Ash bends quite nicely, certainly with steaming, but even without. And I was able to, with a lot of clamps, bend it down here. I did not quite get the bend in the bottom of the corner here, but I'm okay with that, because the gap on this side matched the gap on the other side anyways. So I've been left overnight. I've used a fast setting epoxy, so should be pretty hard now. I'm just curious to know how much spring back we're going to have on this. So let's just start by taking off the clamp that had the most pressure. Was in these corners here. So far, pretty solid. Hasn't really sprung back at all. Well, that's very pleasing. I'll just peel off this plastic here. It should come off of the form here fairly easily. Then we shall take it over to the kayak and see just how well it matches. So somehow we've ended up with a little bit of a gap in this area here, unless I move it. Well, that's closer. Now I do plan to add some very thin high density foam glued on here, just so that it's sliding in. It's not going to, this is not going to move around under bungees. It should be pretty tight. But I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, I probably could heat this area up and flex it open a little bit, which we might do once I clean it up. I probably could have wiped off a bit of the squeeze out that came out the top, but I certainly couldn't on the bottom edge. And we've got all kinds of little bits of thin epoxy, almost like paper thin. And rather than me just run this through the thickness planer and kill the blades on the thickness planer, I'm just going to take a heat gun here and see if we can peel some of this off. I'm really liking this Wagner hot air gun that I bought, I don't know, about 6 months ago. In the course of my business, I've probably gone through half a dozen of these, but none had as much flexibility as, well, not just on and off, but setting the temperature control. So you can turn it on, it comes on at 650 degrees Fahrenheit automatically. We're going to bump that up to about 850 or so. And that should be more than enough to very quickly peel off the epoxy here. Just heating it up enough that I can peel off the excess on the exterior without completely heating the wood up so that it comes apart. I'm just going to keep moving. Alright, that is it. Ran it through the thickness planer, clean up both sides. The inside edges here we can sand. But as far as level goes, we did a pretty good job on that. Found another piece of ash out in the old heap pile. You never know what you're going to use a piece of ash for. So I'm thinking that wider is going to be better, and I don't even have to laminate up any pieces. So how long? That's the question. I'd be guessing at around 8 inches. Well, let's start with 9. So I think that's going to be more than big enough for a piece of foam. Now the other thing will be is we're going to put one bolt through here. This will go on the bottom side, obviously. So there will be a stainless steel bolt coming up through with a wing nut on it. But I would be concerned, well, if it's not really tightened down, it's going to pivot a bit. So I suppose what we can do is glue on a small piece of similar on either edge so that it doesn't. Alright, a quick little cleanup on the belt sander. Stationary belt sander. We'll find center on here, but we'll do something like that. And when it's bolted on, it's not going to pivot. The thickness of this is, well, 1/16 over 1 inch. And this is 9. So center is 4.5. And then we need to go a hair over center there. So that piece should sit there. Does that look centered? That's a little under 4. That's a little over 4. So my math is not very good. Let's just double check to make sure this is actually 9. Yes, so 4.5 is correct. Well, yeah, it should be. There. So, making sure that's square. Alright, I'm going to glue those down. Then, I'm clean it all up, soften corners, and see how we're going to attach it with hardware. Okay, so everything clearly marked. I lined up the first one on this side here with the center line, or with the line that I had, and let's just see here, making sure that it is square. I'm not sure that edge is, but and then we're just going to leave it there, but I need to get this out, so I don't want this glued in to anything squeezing out inside there. So that gets inside, those I'm not touching. To attach the floats to the arm, I'm just going to set a stainless steel carriage bolt up through the plate that's going to hold the foam float, and then epoxy it in place. So first we need to drill a hole down the center to accommodate the carriage bolt. So let's find center. We know that 2.5 inches, or sorry, 2 inches wide, so center should be right there widthwise, and 1 inch there. So I can see right there. I'll drill one and then I can just match the other one, or even just go and drill both of them at the same time. Okay, so I can pound the carriage bolt in. This side will be covered in foam, and we can trust that, you know, if one doesn't crank down a wing nut tight, that this starts spinning. So what I'm going to end up doing, I'm going to grind off a couple edges of the carriage bolt here, and then put a little bit of thickened epoxy. Then I'll pound it in, then I'll add some thickened epoxy around it, so that even if the square head of the carriage starts to slip in the hole, the head shouldn't be able to spin because it's covered in now. And we're not going to worry about what it looks like because this will have foam on it on the underside. So we do that over on the grinder. Okay, so I've kind of ground that, sort of ground the sides off, and then it will fit. Ow, little worm still. Just going to pound that in and add a little bit of thickened epoxy around it. Alright, just mixed up a little epoxy here, fast hardener, kind of making it a heavy paste. So that's Quest System plus 404 high density filler. And I'm just going to smear around here and make a little bit of a dam or a filler. Okay, you can sand that a bit smooth when it's hard later today. To accommodate for the head of the carriage bolt that is epoxied in, I'm just going to countersink a bit of a hole in the foam with a Forstner bit. So that can just sit flush onto there with some contact cement, like so. And then I've cut a couple of very thin strips of this dense foam that I'm going to lay on the underside of the actual arm, just to sort of prevent any scratching of the deck or movement. So I have scuff sand at the bottom of these. I just need to, well, let's see, you need to determine how far up here to sand. Sort of up in here. Just like to have a rough surface for contact cement to bite to. Ah, darn it all, because I didn't need contact cement on the whole thing. Ah, yeah. So I need cement on all of the wood piece. So if that's going onto there like so, I wonder if I'll make a mark by just sticking it down, and no. So we need it only through here. I think we're sort of tack free. Just the optimal for sticking on contact cement. So now it's just, before it's going to stick, we're going to try and get it as centered as possible. And hopefully that will stay. So we've got really tightened up these bungees here quite a bit, but we can loosen them because they were pretty loose. The idea being is we got to get that through there. To the center. Guess I could have gone under those, but I just wanted to see, because we put these floats on, how are they compared to waterline? Pretty close. So with the 3 holes here, obviously you're going to get more stability from having the float out further, but I just don't know how far the customer would want them. But it's pretty stable in there. I think I had to put it under the cross member. So the rest I think will just be a bit of trial and error, and the beauty of it is that if we were to take these off, making sure we're not losing stainless steel pieces fit into the hatch. Yeah, I'm sure he's going to want to have a couple extra stainless steel. I did going to throw in a couple more that I have, but that's the piece that's probably going to get lost. So slide this out and off. That's a heck of a fit. Come on. This will fit inside the boat.